Hi,
Danit,
good morning.
good morning.
Okay,
How are you?
I am so good. This is going to be good. Let's get started right away.
Okay.
Let's bring Eda on. Is she here?
Um,
Um, we have so many questions that people have sent in. Clearly, this is a
big
big,
topic.
yeah, it's a big topic, and there's
I
a
hope we get to
lot to talk
cover all
about.
of them. I hope we get to cover all of them.
Right,
Um,
right.
did you know if do you can you see if she's on yet? Otherwise, we may have to take a minute before I bring her on. I haven't seen her join the.
Sure. Let's see. Let's try sending an invitation to get her. Where is she? Well, in the meanwhile, Shaina, while you look for her, I think that this topic really touches everybody.
Yes.
I think everyone knows somebody in their life. Ah, there she is.
Okay.
Eda,
Good
Eda, where'd
morning.
you?
I am technologically challenged. I'm trying to do this on my laptop, but I'm not, I'm seeing the invite pop up on my phone, but not on my laptop. So I
If
guess
I think it hits different.
I'm, yeah. So because I don't want to get distracted and I feel like, let me just turn my do not disturb on.
Yeah,
Let's,
I just did that.
I
I
just
just did
showed
that as
Danit
well.
how to do that.
Right. Got a tutorial,
Yeah.
but really important. And those of you who have just joined us, if you have any specific questions for Eda, now's a great time to put it in the comment section and hopefully we'll get to it.
Or you
I'll
could
give her a little,
actually, the ones who sent in private, we already sent those into
yeah,
Eden.
yeah, I
But
printed them out.
if they don't mind it being public, then they can. But a lot of these questions were pretty personal, and
Right,
so I don't know if
right.
people would want to.
Oh, meaningful minutes on. Shout out. Hey guys. Woo! Big fans, big fans here.
okay.
Okay. So Eda,
Okay.
before we address everything, I just want to say that you and I are totally twinsies wearing the ready, the
Oh my
sweats. This
gosh.
is
Now I
right. I
want
did it on
one.
purpose.
I want.
Shane,
There's
I forgot to send you the memo.
Love
I didn't
it.
send you the memo.
I need
But
to
for
get one.
anyone watching, I'm going to post the link, and this was not discussed beforehand. I just want to say this is the absolute best piece of clothing that any woman can own in her closet. I have it in two colors and literally
Send
alternates.
me
It is
the
comfortable.
link in it.
I will send the link. I know, either this was not discussed, but I just want to say, best thing
Nor
you
was
have done
this
for,
outfit. This was not, this outfit matching thing was not planned either. So how great is that?
right? That's really, really
So,
funny.
okay.
Okay.
Sorry,
Okay.
just give me
So,
1 second because I have to just connect my phone here because I wasn't planning on using it. And are you
uh,
hearing me okay? We hear you good.
perfect.
Okay, great. Let me just take my phone off my case so I can put it up.
Okay. In the meanwhile, I actually just want to say that I called a friend last night who I know had ADHD. Well, I remember from high school had ADHD and really, really, really struggled to the point that she was put on medication. So I wanted to call her and say, hey, when you were in high school, was there anything that really would have helped you out, in the process? Because we're having this live. And she said to me, I was actually misdiagnosed. She said, I was going through tremendous trauma at home. There was a lot of dysfunction going on, and it really affected the way I functioned in school. So I think it's really important to know that there's a very big difference between actual clinical ADHD, where a child has gone to, has received a full evaluation, over a kid who is going through stuff, a teenager who's going through stuff, and it's presenting itself as ADHD. So I just think that's just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, I mean, on some level, we're all on the spectrum of
Correct.
ADHD, and that's why the name is thrown out too easily, and that's why it's misunderstood and misdiagnosed. So we're going to hopefully clarify some of that today in our conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's start with the first. A lot of questions. We'll start with the first one. What are some, as it is, being a teenager is difficult enough. It's challenging enough. But what are some common challenges that parents who are raising teens with ADHD face? And how can they be there for their teens along this journey? We're not talking about little kids, we're talking about teenagers.
Right. Okay. So firstly, I want to say first, thank you for having me here,
Thanks.
Oh, thank
and nice to
you for
meet
coming.
Thanks
We
for
know you're
joining
busy.
us.
you. I'm going to kind of approach this from a different angle because I actually don't have kids with ADD. I have ADD. So I can talk about what the experience is like as a child and a teen who had ADD undiagnosed and then becoming an adult, understanding and getting so much clarity on why I struggled and what tools would have benefited me. And now today I'm an adult with ADD, diagnosed ADD, and I know all the tools. So I can kind of, even though I don't have a child with ADD, I think people with ADD are canaries in the coal mine. They have a wealth of information that can be used in parenting any child. Because again, everyone has some inattentive symptoms. Everybody's on like on the spectrum on some level. So I think this conversation is for all parents, and I think all people, because we can all benefit from the tools, and that's the gift that people with ADD give all of us. So I think when it comes to parenting, ADD specifically, but again, parenting any child is being able to make a distinction between helping and enabling. And we confuse the two. So I'll give you an example. At one point, and this is not an ADD specific thing, but one of my kids was waking up a little late and Carpool was waiting outside. So I kind of had to push and push and push and say, Carpool's going to leave without you. You know, you better hurry up. But I found that it caused more frustration. And it didn't really benefit us because yeah, she was making it, you know, she was getting to the bus on time. Eventually, I realized I was enabling, right? If she knew that I was out of town or if I wasn't around, I was curious to know if she would make the bus, and she did. So
Wow.
I think that's the greatest challenge for myself as a parent. I think for many parents, it's just knowing, recognizing the difference between I'm doing this, but it's not really helping them versus this is actually helping them, but it might not look like it's helping them, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you want to share about, you know, you brought up that you have ADD. Like, what was that like for you as a teenager?
So at the time, there was not a lot of awareness. And at the time, there was not a lot of mental health awareness, period. So it was a different era. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy because all of the deficiencies, quote unquote, which now I don't see as deficiencies anymore, but at the time I did, that I had to understand them. And to understand them, I decided that, okay, for example, I didn't do well as a student. I was a horrible student. So I decided that, okay, well, I'm not smart. I'm dumb. So why would I try, you know, in school? And so I just internalized that message, and it ended up becoming sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Well, I'm not smart, so why should I read? I'm not smart, so why should I pay attention? I'm not smart, so why should I ask questions? So that narrative was very, very damaging,
Yeah.
you know. So it was hard. Of course, it was
Yeah.
hard. Looking back, and I'm so grateful for this journey because it really helped me understand so much now about the experience of kids who feel misunderstood, and it made me a better parent and I think a better person. But it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. I think one of the reasons I share about my ADD is because I I'm very growth oriented. I every day I try to do something that will enable me to become more self-aware, you know, better, whatever you want to, whatever word you want to use. And I think when people see me and I sort of like have to set some humility, quote unquote, aside, I think I turned out okay. And I had a
You're okay.
lot of challenges as a kid.
I
Yeah,
think more.
I think I'm okay. I
Yeah.
think I'm okay. You know, and I hope this gives some chizuk to parents who of kids who are not, you know, cookie cutter or maybe neurodivergent. Maybe they throw tantrums. I was not an easy kid. I mean, I if you speak to my mom, she'll tell you I'm not, you know, it's no secret. I was kicked out of school. I was kicked out of summer camp. I had impulsivity issues. Again, I undiagnosed ADD. I was not a typical cookie cutter kid, and I turned out okay. And so to parents, it's going to be okay. Going to be okay. We don't have the answers, and even if you did everything right and by the book, there's still no guarantee that you know everything is going to be great. Meaning, you have to trust this process. You know, Hashem put us here with the tools that He gave us, with the children that we have, and there's a reason for it. And our job is to mine and to figure out why we're here. You know, this thing that appears to be a deficiency, maybe it's not. Maybe I'm not, you know, dumb. Maybe I'm not stupid. Maybe I have a very specific and precise gift that is sort of, covered in layers of other things that are preventing me from seeing the gift. So,
Right.
so a long answer to a short question, but it was hard as a kid. Understanding it now, I think it made me a better parent.
So I want to just touch on something you said. Said that you had this message in your mind of, I am dumb, I am stupid, why should I try? So that kind of brings me to my next question that was brought up to us was, how can parents help their teens with self-esteem? Because I do, I mean, one of the symptoms of ADD is actually affecting, their overall sense of confidence, self-esteem. Sometimes socially, they suffer socially because they don't always necessarily know because of the impulse control. So one of the questions that came in, and I know Danit has it printed out, but I'll say it as eloquently as I can. what what tips or tools can we um, tell parents that are having a teenager with self-esteem issues related to ADD? What can they do to help their child who's
Okay,
suffering?
I'm so sorry about this banging in the background. Hopefully it'll stop. It's construction going on. Okay, which is ironically distracting, but we're gonna try to stay focused here. Okay. Um, I heard Zvi Friedman say this. Zvi Friedman's the editor of Chabad.org, and I loved it. And it really resonated. He said, parents who have nachas from their children have nachas from their children. And
Mm.
what does that mean? That means that if you genuinely see, okay, a problem is only a problem once you've identified it as a problem, right? So if you genuinely see your child as a gifted child, then you're not approaching your child with this mindset of, how can I help them? There's something wrong. It's a very, very subtle distinction, because I don't want people to get this idea that they shouldn't help their kids succeed. But I think if it comes from a place of, I think my kid is awesome. Like, I genuinely love my kid. And not to say that it's so easy for every parent to feel this way, but I think that if you see something as incredible, it's very hard to be in a negative mindset about it.
Yeah.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
It does. It actually it explains a lot because I feel that even though you didn't give a tip or a tool to address the actual ADD or the actual self-esteem in the ADD child, you gave it in a micro perspective of like in general, if you look at your child like that, and you can build your child up just by the way you look at them.
Right. Okay. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I actually, that distractibility um, had me not sharing the tools as well. So there, so yes, so that's your, like you said, there's this whole perception, this whole mindset that we're coming with. Then there are the tools. Um, I think you're awesome, right? If this is me to my kid, I think you're awesome. And therefore, like, I want to set up this environment that you're in for success. One very useful tool that I don't coach anymore, and it's been a long time since I've done coaching for ADHD, but I love this idea of manufacturing motivation. So people with ADD are generally not internally motivated to do what needs to be done. They'll do what they want to do to no end, and they can hyper focus, and we could talk about that too, the misconception of focus and ADD. But manufacturing motivation means, I get that if you're not in the mood to do something, you probably won't do it. I know that you need to be doing it, but if you're not in the mood, you're not going to do it. So I need to make sure to set up your environment for success so that you're more likely to do it. Not to say that you will for sure do it. So for example, my going out of town, let's say this one night, um, strangely manufactured the motivation that my daughter needed to get to school on time. A simpler example would be, people with ADD are very distracted by stimuli, by noises, by clutter. So what I did, and this is one of the things that helped me a lot, is I created a designated space, which I'm in right now, for getting work done. So it's a very neat space. It's a clean space. There's only the things that I need to get my things done are here. There's no other stuff. And that's why when I'm home, I have a hard time focusing. This is like, it's sort of on the ground floor of our building. Luckily, I was able to create this space. If I was in my house, I would just find a corner of a room so that when the house is messy, that area is always clean. It's always organized. And I can sort of just zone in that area. And that's manufacturing motivation. Another example would be if, you know, if I want my child to be more active, or if I want my child to eat healthier foods, which we know there's a very strong correlation between what we eat and ADD symptoms. I even though I love, you know, Scandinavian swimmers from Trader Joe's, like if they're in the house, you know, those
Yeah.
candies, these one, I know that if they're in the house, I'm going to eat them. So I'm not going to bring them in the house. And so I'll try to bring things in the house into my home that I know are conducive to like reducing ADD symptoms. So healthy food. It's hard for parents to do this. It's
Sure.
hard for me to do it because I, you know, but it's another tool that can be useful.
That's so interesting that you said, to manufacture what was the words that you used?
Like manufacture motivation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I have a daughter, she has ADHD, and she actually asked us, my husband and I, she's like, I need, I have my own room, but I need a space. I need a space to do, she's super creative. So, Brooklyn real estate in the house is very valuable, but we actually emptied a very big closet, like almost like a walk-in closet, and we made her space. And she has her stuff like lined up, like she's an artist, she's got her paints all lined up and her slime. And this place is like, I think it's like, it's so interesting that you mention it because it's something that she was like craving to have, just this space to focus and do her stuff. She's like, because she wants to paint and she wants to do her stuff, but she needs a space to do it in.
Yeah. And even the tiniest space, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. It doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
so
Sometimes
so
the smaller, the
that's a
better.
great tip, I think, for parents to help their kids. If I mean, it depends where you live and how much space you have, but to give their child the space if it's possible, because
Yeah.
it's amazing what it does.
I get my best work done on planes, on airplanes.
Oh, interesting.
Because because there's nowhere to go.
Right,
It's just me and the table.
right.
And so that's another thing is also to eliminate distractions as much as possible. Although, you know, airplane has a different type of distraction, but you know,
Yeah.
the people around you, but somehow it works. You know, everyone has their way. So like I think also being able to pivot and know, okay, if I know that there's a designated space for me that I'm going to be able to do better work, let me find that space. Some people do better work at Starbucks with
Yeah,
music in the background. So don't like underestimate, you know, that space. It could be any, but a designated space is also important.
yeah.
For me, clutter free is important, but not, you know, but there's different forms of ADD. So everyone's got their way.
Right. I mean, we can talk about the different forms, but I know that one of the biggest challenges with ADD kids or teenagers specifically is executive function. And having I also have a child with ADD, and I feel like, you know, who doesn't nowadays? But another thing also is that I feel like what I want to address, and I feel like I'm as well ADD, but I've diagnosed myself. Um, and I noticed that my brain, I have like all these thoughts going through my head as you're talking, and I'm like, wait, not now. Wait, I have to
Mhm.
like train myself to like not, you know,
Yeah,
interrupt.
right.
So,
But then that's so hard because then you could forget what you wanted to say and then you lost
yeah.
it. So it's a
So
tough one.
there's two things I wanted to ask was the executive function, how to help a teenager who struggles with executive function. And if you want to touch upon what that is exactly, because I'm sure you can describe it better than I will. And the other thing I was going to say is, you see, I forgot
So
the second thing.
I join the club, join the club. You're in a safe space here.
um, oh, it was about easily diagnosed. I know we talked about it in the beginning,
Uh-huh.
um, but I feel like today every family that I know, or I mean, even on this live right here, you know, Danit said her daughter has, you have it. I'm self-diagnosed. But one of my kids does one of my children is diagnosed. So what do you think the reason is for this like spike, or do you think it's always been there, this ADD symptom? Do you think it's just been like, is it like the atmosphere? Do you think it's genetics? Do you, like, what's your um, so I feel like I talked about two separate things, but
Right. Okay. So I'll answer the second question first because it's fresher in my memory. So I would say I don't know the exact reason for the spike, but I would speculate that it's a combination of the ease of distractions that are, that exist all around us, and
Yeah.
our phones, smartphones,
Yeah.
technology. Also awareness. But back when I was a kid, ADD, I mean, ADD in girls was virtually like non-existent, even in terms of
Yeah.
awareness. Boys, it's more easy to spot, because boys tend not, and this is not in all cases, but boys tend to display symptoms, externally, like with impulsivity. Girls have what I call a cognitive hyperactivity.
Yeah.
So it's happening on the inside, and it's not as easy to spot. It's more in the form of daydreaming, which is what, my experience was. I think it's a combination of things. What I find interesting, and it's a question that I don't have the answer to, is given the advances in, research, like we see with medical research, with things like, cancer, we see the rates of cancer have gone down, and we see the survival rates have gone up, and we're seeing a lot of progress. But with mental health, we're not seeing the same, pace. Um, when it comes to progress. So I don't, so even though, yes, we're seeing more of it, there's more awareness, there should be a decline with all of the research out there. So I don't have the answer. And I wish I did. I wish I did, but I don't. And I hope that maybe with call came in, I hope that we do have the answer soon. And maybe, the pharmaceutical companies being held responsible for, pushing pharmaceuticals maybe a little too hard on kids who are too young. This is just
Right.
all guesswork, but I hope it changes. That's all I can say. So I hope it changes for the better. And then to answer your other question, about executive function. So the best analogy I found for what ADD looks like in the brain, is it's like you have a company without a CEO. So you have all the parts, or you have a four-way intersection, right? But no one's directing traffic. You have all the things you need, but you don't have a CEO to tell you when you need what and for what.
Mm.
So in a way, I mean, it's sort of comforting, because, okay, well, wonderful, I have all the parts, but I'm not sure, how to navigate using them, and at what point, which ones should be drawn out and which ones should be suppressed. Most neurotypical people have the ability to use their executive function to, to determine when do I need to focus, when do I need to set this aside, when should I start doing this so that I get it done on time, things like that. Things like procrastination, big issue for people with ADD. And there are ways around it. There are ways to improve executive functioning. We could talk about that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's go there. I
Yeah, let's
say
go.
how do how do you appoint a CEO? How do how do we get there? Because, and I will say, Ida, I look at you, and like you say, you're the multi-role woman. You have accomplished so much, like incredibly. And to me, it looks like ADHD is your superpower, because I think, somewhat you have all these ideas and thoughts, and you materialize them in the most incredible way. So really, what's such a struggle if you appoint a CEO, which clearly you found your CEO and put a crown on her head, and it could lead
I
to
fired
so
a
much
few and then I
success.
hired a couple. It's a
That's a
process.
process. I'm glad you found a good one.
As
You're
anyone
doing
who
a
runs a
great job.
company probably knows, right? Yeah. Yeah.
So, you could share from personal experience, or just, from what you've studied, from what you've learned. But ultimately, clearly, when you find that CEO, it's like a rocket, a launch into success. It really, really is. It's something that kids, teens that have ADHD could almost look forward to. It's like, oh, okay, if I figure out how to hone the soul in, like it's limitless what I can accomplish. It's not a deficit, it's a power.
That's for sure. The potential is limitless. There's no doubt about that, ADD or not. It's a daily struggle. I'm not going to pretend it's not. Every day, I really have to choose. I have to choose awareness, for better or worse. And it's not an easy diagnosis to have, but we all have things that are not easy. There's a French quote, chacun sa, I don't want to say the word because it's not a nice word, but like everyone has their own stuff.
Baggage.
And the question
We'll
is, what
fill
are
in
you
the
going to do with
blanks.
it? Yeah.
Advantage.
So yeah, it's a daily struggle, and I recognize that it carries many gifts within it, and through my journey, I've discovered that. Thank God. I would say when it comes to executive function, there's a lot of ways to improve executive functioning, none of which are going to be perfect. And I think a big part of the ADD experience is self-acceptance, is full acceptance and trust that, I started learning Shar B'Tachon a couple of years ago, and it changed my life. And so even though I'm trained like as a psychotherapist, and my focus was ADD, and I'm even a certified ADD coach, all that stuff was so valuable to me. But by far, Shar B'Tachon probably was the most useful tool, ironically. And it's so interesting because as I read through it, I see that a lot of the modern day self-help books are have the same format
Right.
as Shara B'Tachon. Like, here's what you're gonna read. Here's how this is gonna benefit you.
Right.
Here's how it's structured. Here are 7 ways that, and it's literally 7 ways, 5 ways, like even the same numbers, like 7 habits of highly effective people.
Right.
Here are 7 characteristics of someone who could be trustworthy. Anyone who learned Shara B'Tachon probably knows what I'm talking about. But bottom line is if Hashem put me here, and with the struggles I have, there's a reason for it. So acceptance is very important. Is a very important part of the executive functioning work, because without acceptance, then we're still resisting, and in a place of resistance, you can't really change. You can't make lasting and positive change that will really last a long time. Meaning it could be temporary, but it's not as long lasting from my experience. So I actually heard, I don't know if you know Lewis Hose, the School of Greatness podcast. A great thing a great episode. He interviewed he's a neurologist and a neuroscientist. I think he's also a brain surgeon. Like, he has studied every
Wow.
area. Right, yeah. I mean, he's spent years and years studying the brain. And he's also a medical doctor. And Lewis Hose asked him, what would you say is like the number one tool that we can implement based on your research, to live a better life or to improve our brain mind function? And he said, master emotional regulation. That's what he said,
Wow.
to master emotional regulation. And so
So easy.
that, what
Yeah.
was that?
Makes it sound so easy.
Yeah.
Just
Right. And
right.
it's the hardest thing, especially for someone with ADD.
Yeah.
Um, it's so hard because emotional regulation is probably the single hardest thing for somebody with ADD to do, because of the impulsivity and the hyperactivity. And so I think that, gosh, I mean, executive function, being constantly mindful of my emotional world and my emotional life, or like my limbic system. That's the part of our brain that is responsible for all those things. Is it's hour to hour, minute to minute, constantly something that I try to keep in mind and think about. And what I do is I keep it so simple, because simpler is better and more likely to not fall by the wayside. So for example, I have these bracelets that I wear, and my bracelets, like, they each say something that I like to remember. So I actually gave one to my daughter this morning. We just like exchange, I'm like, just make me one because I need it, you need it. So one of the bracelets says Ayeka.
Oh
So
wow.
we know that those were the words that Hashem said to Abraham, to Adam. The first words uttered to a human is Ayeka, is where are you? Remember where you are in all of this. Yeah, you're dealing with tons of distractions, but remember why you're here. Take a deep breath. It's okay. One strategy, not directly related to executive function, but
It just sounds
something that helps me is,
that sounds very grounding. It sounds very
yeah,
grounding. It just
yeah,
takes you in, like,
yeah,
yeah, that's
Takes
yeah,
you from up
um,
yeah.
here to here.
yeah, yeah. And then, I mean, one says truth. I'm very much, even at a cost. Sometimes it's hard. So we will often will be impulsive in our emotional reactions because we're not really saying what's actually going on. So if you get mad at someone, anger is a secondary emotion. If I'm angry, I'm not and I'm not generalizing here, this is just from my own understanding of it. If I'm angry, I'm probably in pain.
Yeah.
And there's probably something, a pain point that needs to be
Yeah.
addressed. And
Yeah.
part of emotional regulation is being able to identify our what emotion is, what emotion inside of me is needs expression.
Right.
And just like ADD gets misdiagnosed, emotional expression is something that can also be sort of what's the word, misled, or
Misdirected.
miscommunicated.
Misdirected.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Yes, misdirected. So not a clear answer to how do you eliminate, executive function problems, because there's so many different pieces to that puzzle. But I think acceptance, a recognition that there's only one of you, and ayeka, like you are, where are you in all of this? What's going on? Don't be afraid to dig a little deeper and find the truth behind what you're experiencing on the surface, and go from there. Visual reminders are a big one for me. On your bathroom mirror, you can even put a big, when you wake up in the morning, you go to brush your teeth. If you're looking at a big sign that says, like Ayeka, just like a little reminder, little
It's
things.
funny that you said a sign on your bathroom, because my child, who has very low executive function, I don't like to use the word poor, it's low. We made little notes around the room so that he would remember what to do next. You know, pick up clothes
Right.
from the floor, make your bed, go down, put your shoes on, because there was they can't remember one thing to the next. It just they get so distracted, and they come downstairs and their shoes are still upstairs, and then they forgot to brush their teeth. They just need step by step reminders as well. So it's funny that you said bathroom, that really stuck out to me, because I saw that
Yeah.
firsthand how helpful that was.
Right. Right. And then we won't always remember. Like I went back up to my apartment several times before I was able to sit in the chair and, and remember something. Like it just sometimes, we forget, and it's fine. It happens. It happens. Like you'll be okay. I'll be okay.
Right.
My kids will be okay. Everyone's going to be okay. We don't have, no, another bracelet I have is that says Einmal on it. And Einmal means it's actually um, from the Nietzsche, a German philosopher, who said Einmal is Keinmal. It's actually in German. It's a phrase in German. What it means is that the once is never, something like that, loosely translated. But what it means is this very moment, like this moment right now, is not going to be replicated. It's never happened before. And I think very often, like especially with live, like in like an Insta live like this one, it very, very often people who do live anything like live speeches, they'll go back and think about what they could have said and done differently. But the reality is you're doing this all in real time. There's no script, like there's no dress rehearsal for this moment. So you have to be able to acknowledge that being hard on yourself for something that happened in the past, or being super worried about something that's going to happen in the future that you have no control over, it's wasted energy.
Yeah.
And so that word Einmal reminds me, I don't have to have all the answers. In fact, like right now, I have ADD and I struggle with it. This doing a live is not so conducive to ADD symptoms. As you probably know, like it's hard. We forget stuff, and I don't want to interrupt you when you're saying something and something will pop into my head. I have a pen and paper right here always, so I could just write it down so I don't forget it. We're doing this in real time. It's live. It's
Sure.
life is improv. That's what we like to say. I got that from one of the interviews I did with a couples counselor. He's like, it's all about play. It's improv. Like we don't know. We're doing the best that we can. We're
I
all doing
love
the best
that.
that we can.
I love that.
Right. Right. Um, Ida, I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on medication in the ADHD community, because I do know of parents who have given their kids who have ADHD, Ritalin or Adderall, and it did wonders for the child at school. And then sometimes there's side effects, sometimes they're not. Different kids have different experiences. I'm curious. Obviously, there's no right or wrong. I'm just curious to hear your thoughts.
So the one thing that that I don't want to say it bothers me, but I think that maybe we can rethink would be when someone says I'm anti-medication. That to me means that maybe there needs to be more due diligence, because it's, first of all, Hashem put medication in this world as a tool. It's here. It's here for a reason. Not that everybody should pop pills. I don't believe in that either. But someone who has a child with severe depression or with suicidal ideation knows that if a doctor said, here is a pill, a medication that I can give your child that would reduce their symptoms and help enable them to live, without these symptoms, would allow their children to take it, I hope, right? If it can help. And so I think with ADD, I think one of the problems is it's misunderstood. Some people think it's not real. Children can technically function maybe at a minimal level. Some can, some can't, but without medication. So it's become like a point of controversy, like take it, don't take it. I believe in, if I had to give an answer, I would say explore it, try it. There's no long-term known risks. The FDA would not approve a medication. I mean, we know FDA goes through tremendous bureaucracy and steps and all these things that are done prior to approving any sort of medication. Not to say they're all safe. And we always joke about how when you watch these commercials for medications for different, for endometriosis or diabetes, at the bottom, like the fine print, those things sound worse than the symptoms
Right.
themselves. Like, well,
Right.
beware, you might die and you might experience heart palpitations and heart attack and this and that. Yeah,
Right.
of course. I mean, nothing is going to be smooth and perfect in that world. But at the same time, the biggest question is, what are the risks, I think, of taking medication, and what are the benefits?
Right.
Someone with undiagnosed ADD who's, let's say, 16 years old, has impulsive tendencies, and is behind the wheel, okay, of a car, is significantly more likely to get into a car accident, to engage in reckless behaviors, if they're unmedicated. And we know the risks. I mean, if you look at the statistics, car accidents among teens, I mean, that's
Yeah.
skyrocketed. And especially now with smartphones. So the question is, if you knew as a parent that giving your child medication for ADD will reduce the instances of that, will make them less likely to engage in reckless behaviors like alcohol consumption, things like that. What would you do as a parent? And I think another, misconception about medication is that, um, you know, people who don't have ADD will take medication and it will do things for them, right? That it's like they call it the college, what do they call it? The college, something, college kids take it to help them study for finals, things like that. For somebody with ADD, it just calibrates them so that they can have basic functioning like a neurotypical person.
Right.
So it does different things in someone who has ADD and in someone who doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Appoint your
interesting. It
CEO.
reduces hyperactivity, even though something like Adderall or Vyvanse, or these are stimulants,
Yeah.
but they actually reduce the
Right.
hyperactivity. They don't increase
Right.
it. Maybe they increase it in someone without ADD.
Right.
So it's important to explore whether or not that can be the right path. I also think it's, I think a child under the age of 6 or 7, I don't think that it's necessary unless there's have maybe a very severe case, severe ADD. I think that it's important for schools to acknowledge that at 6 years old, a child should not have to sit in a desk from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m.
Right.
So, that's where we need community support, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
speaking of community support, it's so important that we realize when a child is showing signs of ADHD, we look at all the factors, all the factors. How many kids are in the classroom? Like you said, are they sitting for 8 hours straight? Some kids could, some kids can't. It doesn't mean they have ADHD. What's going on at home? Is something going on at home that's in their minds, and they just can't sit still because they're feeling a certain way.
100%. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And I also think that there's a balance right now of like pushing pills versus when does a child really need it? It's like, oh, my kid's struggling socially and he's a little bit impulsive, but maybe the kid just needs to go for a social skills class. If he's in sixth or seventh grade or she's in sixth or seventh grade and they don't know how to necessarily come into a conversation and they don't know how to be in a group setting, they may need a social skills teacher and work with the school or work with a private therapist or someone who knows, or an ADHD coach. So there's also that fine line of like, when are we really pushing pills? Is there another solution? Our school, a parent needs to know their child.
Right.
Yeah. And for sure, there's so many things out there that a child can benefit from. And I'm glad that you said that, because I also think that even though I do believe that in medication, meaning when necessary, I also see it as sort of like a last case scenario type thing where there's other tools available. I wouldn't tell a parent who came to me and said, I think my child might have ADHD symptoms. I wouldn't say run and get it evaluated, start them on medication ever.
Right.
Meaning, it's
Or
so what's
yeah.
how are they sleeping? How are they eating? Like you said, Danit, what are the what's the family dynamics? What are the family dynamics? What's going on at school? Like, tell me more. Tell me, like, let's get a systemic, like a whole picture, big picture approach here, and understand who this person is. And but let medication be, let's just put as many tools as we can in our toolbox, and then we'll use the ones that we need as we
Right.
go and grow. Yeah.
Um, I'm curious how, if if it even did, how having ADHD, did it affect you socially at all as a teenager? Um, even just into your 20s, and if you have any advice or just thoughts on the social aspect, because we know the behavioral, in school and stuff like that, but amongst friends and peers.
Yeah, it did and it does. So, and it's pretty common amongst people with ADHD. What I mentioned earlier about truth, what I used to do was I used to uh, lie about what, like, for example, if somebody was talking to me, I would nod my head as if I understood and was listening to what they were saying, when in reality, I probably heard maybe like 5% of what they told me. And in an effort to just, I don't even know what it was. Maybe it was people pleasing or being embarrassed to admit that I was, maybe I felt, and it could be because I tend to be like, I'm a kind person. So I don't want someone to think that I didn't care about what they were saying to me. I just didn't know how to navigate that type of situation. And it happened all the time. It happened in school. It happened, with friends, with new people, at Shabbos tables. I had to be able to admit, I'm so sorry, I actually didn't hear some of what you said. Could you say it again? And it doesn't seem hard it doesn't even seem like hard when I say it now. But if you try it, if someone's talking to you and you were spaced out, to be able to say to them, could you just tell me again what you were saying, especially when it's somebody, maybe someone new or that you don't know very well. It's a really, really hard thing to do.
Right.
It's also it's very liberating once you start to do it, because I can't always control when my mind wanders. It happens. So to be able to be fully honest with myself and with the person, that actually helps deepen your relationship with them too. And what I found was that it's like when I was in third grade, that's when it, I feel like a lot of people have like a teacher that they remember, or like something that happened when they were a child that just is very poignant in their memory. And for me, that was not being able to raise my hand in third grade. I was too afraid to raise my hand to ask a question, because what if my teacher already discussed that topic? Or what if I would sound dumb? Because again, I didn't feel like I was smart enough to participate in the classroom. And what I found, and I feel like so many of us know this to be true, whenever I had a question and I didn't raise my hand, chances are there were other girls who had the same exact question who also didn't raise their hand, because it's such a common thing. And it's not different with being a truth teller and being able to be vulnerable and just tell them how you feel. Like, I totally just spaced out. I'm so sorry. Not even to say I'm so embarrassed anymore, because
Right.
I can't, I didn't do it. I didn't space out on purpose. So with a teacher, in graduate school, it was hard. I wasn't yet doing it. What I was doing then was, if I didn't understand something, I'd run home and Google it and read all about it. So I would just do it in my own private time. But now I'm much more inclined to be honest, and I'm still working on it. It's a work in progress, like everything else. But it's important. I don't even remember how we got here, but you'll bring me back to the
No,
question that brought us here. Yeah.
we're talking about the social aspect of
Right.
ADHD and
Oh, right,
how it
right,
affects.
right,
And
right.
I
Yeah.
think that's great. I think that's such a gorgeous tool for any. I mean, it's great. It's so true because you could literally have a conversation with someone and they'll walk away in the middle of a conversation. Like just literally in their mind it's over. Like they weren't listening. And like you said, I'm not embarrassed. I'm so sorry. Could you just repeat that? Totally spaced out.
Right.
And that's okay. Like it's okay.
Right. Right. And also I think that especially with kids, when they're talking to you and you're not really listening, they know.
No,
They know.
I know.
And yeah. So with kids especially, I would say they're so because their kids are truth tellers. And that's why they can be triggering sometimes for adults is that they're such truth tellers. And let me tell you, teens are they can be truth tellers, but real ones, like at their peak. And that's the hardest type of truth telling to have to deal with as a parent. And that's
Yeah.
where I think teens are such magnificent people. And I think they're so misunderstood.
Yeah.
And I think there's so much potential that it's like they have this fuel. They have so much fuel and it needs like an engine. So like they're creating their engine and we just need to give them a really great engine to use their fuel for. And it's a tough thing to do, but I really think that because any teen that I know, and I'll say my daughter is one of them who has used her fuel to harness her potential. She's done incredible things, and I'm blown away. I can't believe she's my daughter.
Wow.
It's just it's mind blowing because I told her if I was your age and friend like and you were in my class, I would be so in awe of you, and you probably would not even like know I existed because I'd be like, but we just joke about it. You know, it's just really they're special. Teens are special. They're very
Yeah,
special. Yeah.
they're so
Yeah.
fun to raise, and we have to just no embrace it. Really, at the end of the day, they are people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
Right.
are people. They are not. They're not our small little kids. We can't. We can support and we can role model, but they really are their own people. And
Right.
especially when they're ADD and they are extremely, um, you a lot of ADD kids are extremely creative. They have out of the box thinking. You got to just help ground them.
Oh yeah. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
take a creative kid with impulsivity, my amazing daughter, and I mean, I come home, no joke, and like different walls of my house are painted, including the wall behind me. I mean, she's incredibly talented, but I have no idea what I'm going to walk into at any given time. And I mean, she's incredibly talented. I mean, people call her like the little Jackson Pollock, but it's as a parent to understand your child and appreciate them, just like you said right in the beginning, we're like, what tools or tips can you have for a child with a teenager who has ADHD, looking at them and seeing how incredible they are. So when I come home and I see our brick wall has this like whole incredible masterpiece, instead of being like, oh my gosh, like what just happened, it's just like, wow, this is incredible, you are so talented, do you need more paint, you know so
And that's where the opportunity for growth lies in a parent because it's very, very difficult, especially when I know a lot of parents who are type A, very organized and very clean. And so let's say their spouse has ADD. This is a very common thing that I've seen. One type of parent with an ADD parent and the child has ADD.
yeah,
And that's why emotional regulation is probably the single most important thing for a parent who's very organized, and then to have a child who is all in their space. It's your space too. We're sharing the space, and that's why it's hard for siblings sometimes to not sometimes very often siblings of kids with ADD because they struggle, and
yeah,
it's not their life story. It's their siblings' life story, and they don't want to have to bear the burden of the way life does change for a family. I'm saying burden because for the sibling who's young, they don't see it as a gift.
right,
It's very hard to. A
Right.
parent can because as you're a parent.
Right.
So it's very hard. So to be able to regulate and like the example you just shared, Danit, that's a beautiful example of a perfect example, I should say, of of enabling a child to work toward their potential without being in the way. At the same time, recognizing like you know I'm an organized person. I have needs too. I want this house to be organized, to be able to pivot,
Right.
and to it's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to do.
Right, because you don't want to squash them. You don't want to, a kid with ADHD, they are just limitless. It's just the
Right.
ideas and the thoughts and and you want to be able to give them this like channel, to express it in any possible way.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it's funny because my daughter started with canvases, and then we had to get her bigger canvases, and then we gave her like one wall of the house, and like now she wants to paint the whole world, like just she's like, "Can I paint your car?" I'm like, "Don't think so." Great idea,
Right.
but that's
Right.
probably not going to happen.
Right. 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 And that's another challenge of parents. So we were talking about helping versus enabling. Also, being able to figure out boundaries, but at the same time ensure that they're flexible and
Yeah,
porous, like we say. Like there's there has to be some level of respect. So you don't want your car painted, right? But
right,
you want your child to be able to paint where she can. So that's why it's a constant like animal. It's like in real time, like what's going on right now? What's the best way to navigate this? How can I help without enabling? And that's
right,
why it's so not black and white. The tools that parents can benefit from. There's different tools for different strokes for different folks, no pun intended.
right,
And that's it. That's just how it's done in real time. Every parent's different. Every child is different. But we know that if we have nachas from our children, we'll have nachas from our children.
right.
If we genuinely see their strengths, they will too, because kids see right through us, and so do teens, if
More.
maybe even more so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
I do think it's also important though for a parent who has a teenager with ADHD not to feel the need to normalize their child or to mainstream their child, but instead to take the child's qualities and work with it, help them navigate the journey instead of trying, medication is so helpful when it's helpful, but the goal is not to normalize you and make you like everyone else. That's not the goal over
Right.
here.
yeah.
Not
That's
box
such
them
a
in.
great point.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, such a great point. We're not trying to make you like everybody else. We're trying to figure out what you
Well,
need. Yeah,
that's I think where the schools come in as well, because they go to school, and you have a large percentage of the kids that fit the mold and fit in the box, and those kids sit behind a desk and do what they're told, and then you have the ADHD kids, or the ADD kids, however you want to label them. And the schools can be a partner with the parents on helping the child not fit into the mold, because they're not in the mold, and that's okay.
Right.
So, one of the things that I think, as a parent, we have to be our kids' advocate and meet with the schools, get an IEP, work with a professional to figure out what is the best fit for the child, what school is the best fit for the child. You know, there was one teacher that helped my child so much, because as soon as he saw that he was fidgeting, he would call him up to his desk and be like, I need you to go to the office and make 30 copies of this, you know. And it just gave him the ability to just walk out, not get in trouble, not feel bad about himself. And at the end of the day, the self-esteem is coming from feeling bad that he can't sit behind the desk. And if the teachers and the school are aware and they know of what's going on, and we work together as we collab, and I don't care if you have to harass the principal, harass the principals, be your kid's advocate, and like work with the teachers so that the child is not getting squashed.
yeah, yeah. This example you shared is a perfect example of not parents, but even educators who have nachas from the children, have nachas from the children. There's a story about a boy. This is a true story. A boy who used to fidget a lot, and he had the pens. He would like tap the desk with his pencils constantly, and he was disrupting the class, and kept getting sent to the principal's office. One day they hired a new principal at the school, and a different, better principal. And the boy went to the principal's office again for hitting that desk with the pencils. And the principal opened up his desk drawer and took out two drumsticks and said, "There's something in you that needs to be expressed." And this guy became one of the lead drummers for, I think, AC/DC. You could look it up, but one of the big
I
rock bands.
Wow.
heard
So
this
that's
story.
that's
Yes.
what it's about. There's a dormant quality there that is yearning, like a pressure cooker, you're yearning for expression,
Yeah.
and see it. And it's hard, it's hard for teachers, and I have to acknowledge teachers for having 20 kids in a classroom. It's very hard to individualize, each attention to each child. However, if you go in there and you genuinely see neshamas and you genuinely see incredible souls, you're coming in with a different outlook. You are, as a teacher. So I remember where I read this, or maybe I heard it in a shir, but I think actually no, somebody wrote a letter to the Rebbe about being a mechanech in a school, and I think the Rebbe, I think this is the Rebbe's letter. He said, if you find it hard to have patience, or if you struggle with your patience, don't be a teacher. If
Ooh.
you are short-tempered, don't be a teacher. Now, there are people who need work, and that maybe that's the only thing that's available. Okay, but remember, it says in Shara B'Tachan that if you are if your talent is to be I think it said I'm going to get this wrong, a woodworker, but you'll get the gist of it, a woodworker, and you are a leather, whatever you call it, or something else, you're actually committing a sin if you're not working toward you're moving in the direction that Hashem created you for. So that's what it's about. It's also the school's responsibility when someone interviews a teacher, for a position, ask questions. How do you handle stress?
Right.
Yeah.
Tell me what you do when you're under pressure. Those are the questions we have to ask teachers. Not, what was your GPA at Stern? Like, I don't care. I mean, say a good teacher is not someone who's just intelligent. A good teacher is someone who has wisdom.
Right.
So it's everyone's responsibility, and everyone could play a role.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Ida, I feel like you gave such good stuff. Like this is, yeah. Wow.
Um,
Wow.
I want to say two quick things. First of all, there were some questions about why we started our live at 11. Usually we have a once a week live. It's in the evenings, usually at around 8 or 9 o'clock New York time. But this week we had to change our live. I wanted to a few comments came up. So we had the pleasure and honor of having Ida, and this was the time that worked for her. So we we had to accommodate Ida's timing, and so we are going to upload this into a podcast on Spotify, and you can find us on YouTube. So anyone who couldn't make it today will be able to catch this on our podcast/YouTube channel. And I just want to thank you again for taking out time from your day and joining and helping us bring out the message to parents in our weekly, teen talk, chizuk, however you want to call it. We're not here alone. Everyone has their own, challenges or struggles or whatever it is with their kids, and no one has to do it alone. So thank you for coming on today and just helping us send that message out.
Right. And Ida, if there's
Thank
any
you.
last any last minute parting words that you'd want to share, the floor is yours.
Just thank you for having me, and thank you for making it work. And I saw some of your other stuff before we went on this live. I just wanted to get an idea of your guys' vibe, and I really, really enjoy your content. I watched the one with Simon Jacobson that you
Oh,
did,
he was
and
so great.
I highly recommend it. It's really, you're doing great things, and I just want to wish you a lot of mazel and continued
Thank
success in what you do.
you. Thank you. And to you too, in all of your endeavors.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank
Okay.
It
you.
was nice
Take
meeting
care. Enjoy your
you.
You
day.
too. Thank you. You too.
Bye.